Hello, everyone. I know many of you did not get the opportunity to attend our lesson tonight, and I did not record on the cloud, so I'm recording the lesson now, so you guys will have the opportunity to review it, so you'll be prepared for our assessment for next week. So I want to begin with our discussion of fluency. I want you to think about when was the last time you bought something, and what was it that you bought? Okay, so we buy things for a variety of reasons. We buy things for price, quality, the particular brand that makes a product, the comfort. When I think about clothing, I often buy based on comfort, style, and as many of our students said today in class, necessity. So I want to know your opinion. Here on the left, we have a very affordable car. This costs around $13,000. On the right, we have a more luxurious car. This is a Mercedes AMG GT63S, and it retails for just over $170,000. I think this would be a really lovely car to have, but unfortunately for me, this is a little bit out of my price range. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to tell me what your opinion is. Okay, so I want you to think about what your opinion is, and I want you to think about reasons that support your opinion. So think about two or three reasons as to why you would prefer the Mercedes or why you would prefer the cheaper option on the left. Okay, so now we're going to move into the writing portion of our class. So we're going to review the organization of an essay. We're going to talk about process writing. Then we're going to talk about building transitions into our writing. So I want to begin with the organization of a 5-paragraph essay, and I want to focus on the introduction. So I think this is the area that we could have most improved on. So here's an example of a good introduction. So we don't want to talk too much at the beginning of the essay about different aspects such as where did remote work come from? What was the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic? Yeah, true. These are all things that brought about remote work, but we really want to focus our essay on the essay question, which is remote work positive or negative? And remember, our first sentence is our hook. We want to draw our reader in, get our reader's attention. So that's highlighted in yellow for us. And here it says, remote work has revolutionized modern employment. So right away, that's a very, very strong statement that gets my attention. So that's one strategy that we can use to engage the reader. Another strategy is an interesting statistic. Or we can choose to ask a question to the reader. Now, if you're writing in a very formal context, you're going to want to avoid asking a question because you don't want to speak directly to the reader in a very formal academic writing context. But for the purposes of our class, that's an acceptable way to engage the reader. Here in green, we've introduced the topic. We're talking about remote work. So we want to let our reader know what exactly is remote work. Remote work, the practice of working from locations outside the traditional office, has rapidly become a transformative aspect of modern employment. So right there, you've told the reader what you're going to be talking about. In blue, we have our roadmap or our thesis map. Remember, a roadmap will tell a driver where the car is going to. Your thesis map is going to tell your reader where you're going with your essay. So here you want to state the three big ideas that you're going to be discussing. Remote work leads to greater flexibility, reduces stress from commuting, and it increases overall productivity. And finally, our last sentence, which is highlighted in gray, is our thesis statement. It says, remote working arrangements are highly beneficial for employees and for companies. So moving to the body of our essay, here we're going to discuss the first big idea, and we're talking about greater flexibility. So we've got a transition. This is where we're indicating to our reader that we're going to begin discussing our big ideas, and that's highlighted in yellow. Highlighted in green, we have our topic sentence. This is where we're going to discuss the main point, or we're going to share with our reader the main point of this particular paragraph. So here we're talking about how remote work leads to greater flexibility. In blue, we're going to add supporting details, which tell a little bit more about how remote work creates greater flexibility. And then finally, we want to be able to transition to our next paragraph. So here it says, this flexibility and comfort plays an integral part in helping employees to be more productive. So this is a great transition between paragraphs if my next paragraph is going to discuss how remote working leads to greater productivity. Finally, we want to move to our conclusion. And our conclusion is really simple. We do not want to introduce any new information in the conclusion. We want to signpost our conclusion, let our reader know that they're coming to the end of the essay. We want to restate our thesis, which here is that remote work is beneficial. We want to include a summary, and we want to end with a final thought. Okay, so remember, when you're creating a thesis statement, you're not simply discussing the pros and cons of an issue. You've got to pick a particular side of an argument, and you've got to argue your point, right? That's the basis of English academic writing is argument. So when you're choosing a particular side that you want to argue and you're in a standardized testing environment, please choose the point that's easiest to argue. So for example, you might think that remote work is actually negative and that it should be discontinued, but you might find that this is a little bit difficult to argue. You might find that it's far easier to argue in favor of remote work. If you've got unlimited time, you might seek out reasons as to why remote work is negative. But if your time is limited, if you're in a standardized testing environment, always choose the option that's easiest to argue. So let's talk about the writing process. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put these steps in order. Okay, so the first step in our writing process is brainstorming. This is where we come up with ideas, and they don't necessarily need to be good ideas, or we don't need to think about whether there's something we want to pursue or something that we want to get rid of. Just come up with as many ideas as you can. When you're in the brainstorming process, there are no bad ideas. The next is organizing. Here you're going to think about what the essay question is, what you want to say, and how you're going to support whatever your opinion is. So graphic organizers can be really helpful in this portion of the writing process. After you've organized your ideas, you want to formulate your first draft. That's the drafting phase. Then we want to move to revisions. When you're revising your essay, you're making changes to the actual content of the essay. For example, you might look at one of your body paragraphs and say, you know what? My supporting details really don't relate directly to what my topic sentence is. So I need to come up with new supporting details that more clearly support this particular side of the argument. And then next, we want to edit our essay. When we edit, we simply go back over our essay and we make sure that all the spelling, grammar, and punctuation is correct. And finally, we want to publish our essay. Remember, when you publish your essay, that doesn't mean that you can never go back to it. You can always go back, right? The writing process really is never ending. Even after you've published, you can always go back and make changes. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about transitions. And we started talking about this briefly last week. Transitions help to make our writing more cohesive. So here we have that chain link with transition words written on it. Transition words, just like a chain link, they bind our writing together. They bring it together and they make it more understandable for our reader. Our reader needs to understand the relationship between different aspects of our writing. So, some common transitions are words or phrases that indicate time or chronological order. And we've got those listed here. They can be words or phrases for examples. For example, for instance, such as, they can be words or phrases for adding additional ideas, further, furthermore, in addition, moreover. And finally, we can have words or phrases that reinforce a particular opinion or statement. In fact, indeed, of course, or clearly. When we're using transition words and phrases, we can use transitions between sentences in our writing. We can use transitions between paragraphs, and we can use transitions between sections of our writing. So for our class, we are largely going to be talking about sentence and paragraph level transitions. So here we have two sentences. Remote work allows us to set our own schedule, and as a result, we have more time to pursue our own hobbies. So this is a cause and effect relationship, and we have the phrase as a result, which indicates cause and effect. We also have transitions between paragraphs. So this is letting the reader know how our paragraphs are connected or related. In addition to offering greater flexibility, remote work has benefits for the environment as well. And then we would begin a new paragraph. In this particular instance, we've concluded a paragraph that talks about the flexibility involved with remote working, and we're about to begin a paragraph that talks about remote work's benefits to the environment. And finally, we're not going to be talking about this in this class, but when you create larger academic writing works, you're going to have to transition between different sections. So for example, if you were creating a research paper where you're talking first about the benefits of academic writing, and then you want to begin a new section where you talked about how businesses can implement academic writing at their organization, you might use two sentences like this. Remote work clearly has undeniable benefits for employees and companies. Some ways that organizations can effectively employ this arrangement include, so you're alluding to the fact that there are benefits, which hopefully discussed extensively in the previous section, and now you're going to talk about how businesses can implement these arrangements. So here we've got all these materials from our textbooks are in the Google Classroom, okay? I want to now discuss narrative point of view. When you're writing in an academic context, more often than not, you're going to be writing from the third person point of view, which means that you're going to avoid using I, me, my, and we. So for our class, when we're writing opinion essays and we're writing persuasive essays, you are allowed to write in the first person. And you can use language such as, I think, I feel, I believe, in my opinion. And if you're writing a persuasive essay and you're calling your audience to action, you might say, we have no other option but to. And don't be afraid to use adverbs like strongly or firmly. They can help to make your opinion seem clearer and to seem a bit more firm. So let's go ahead and let's go through this essay here. I want you to pause our video and I want you to find the transition words that you see in this essay. So go ahead and pause your video and do that now. Okay, so welcome back. Now, if we look here, we've got several different examples of transition words. While, to begin with, all of which, not only, but also, furthermore, can lead to is an example of cause and effect. In the long run, talking about sequencing. Another, not only, but, in conclusion, and while. Now, these are just examples. You may have chosen other words, and that's okay. Those are just some words that I chose. This is an example of our essay that we went over last week. And if you look at each of our body paragraphs, the first two words in each paragraph is remote work, remote work, remote work. We want to add a little bit of variety to our writing, and we also want to indicate what idea we're discussing. So I want you to think about how you could add transitions to each of these topic sentences. Now, you could use first, second, and third, but remember, when you do that, it's okay, but your essay more or less sounds like a list. First this, second this, third this. Try and add a little bit of variety and give it a more narrative form. So you might say, to begin with, furthermore, or next, and then finally. Okay, so I want you to look at this essay, and I want you to pause our video. I want you to look at the relationship between these sentences, and I want you to complete this essay with transition words that you've come up with on your own. Okay, welcome back. I am going to now share my answers with you. So we've got several different transition words that I've come up with. While, to begin with, consequently, this can result in, moreover, for instance, another, specifically, in contrast, in conclusion, and ultimately. So again, those are my ideas. You guys are free to come up with the transition words that you feel work best in your own writing. Okay, so let's talk about text highlighting and annotation. Okay, so we're going to quickly review what we've been talking about since our first day of class. The topic is what the text is mostly about. The purpose is the reason that the author's writing. The main idea is the most important thing the author wants to communicate, and supporting details give us more information about the main idea. Okay, so your topic should just be a few words, right? Maybe you're talking about remote work, the advantages or the disadvantages of remote work. Your main idea, on the other hand, should be a complete sentence, because this is a complete thought. It's the main idea the author is trying to communicate. Remote working arrangements should be discontinued, or remote working arrangements are beneficial to employees and companies. So just like annotating, which we're going to discuss in a moment, highlighting is a skill, and it's designed to help you better access the information in the text and better retain it as well. You want to use this as a study tool, right? So some do's and don'ts: do not highlight the entire text, right? Highlighting everything is essentially highlighting nothing. If you're going to highlight something, choose a sentence or a word that highlights the main idea, sums up the main idea. Use quotes, statistics, highlight specialized terms. It says here, avoid highlighting bolded words. Remember, if the words are already bolded, they already stand out. So there's not a particular importance associated with highlighting them because they're already standing out from the rest of the text. You may choose to highlight important or useful data or examples or links to other ideas. Okay, and this is, I think, a really good tip. Do not highlight as you read. as we're reading, we are tempted to go through and to just start highlighting everything, right? Read a paragraph, absorb and analyze everything that you've read, then highlight portions of the paragraph that you think are most important. And we're going to look at examples of using color-coded highlights. I think color-coded highlights are really important. So here we've got a sample essay which covers the minimum wage in the United States, and it talks about reasons why we should raise the minimum wage. And we're going to look at how we can highlight this, and we're going to use just one color, and we're going to only look to highlight the main idea and the supporting details. Okay, so you can pause your video and highlight this text on your own, and then I'll come back and share my answers. Okay, so go ahead and pause and complete that now. Okay, welcome back. So here are my sample answers. So if you look at the first paragraph, I've highlighted the thesis statement. I've highlighted some key statistics, that it's $7.25 an hour and it's remained stagnant. And I also highlighted another important statistic here. Again, you can look and see that all the big ideas, all the topic sentences have been highlighted in my writing. And I've also gone to great lengths to highlight any key details, any supporting details that include relevant statistics. Now let's look at another example, and we're going to look at something that's a little bit more detailed and color-coded. Okay, so here I've got my thesis in blue, and I've got the thesis which is restated in the conclusion. I've got my yellow highlighting my first reason and supporting details associated with that. The green highlights the second reason and supporting details associated with that. And the third reason supporting details are all highlighted in pink. So let's talk a little bit about annotating. Annotating is taking notes within the text. And people who are very good at annotating make use of the margins in the text. It's a little bit more difficult than highlighting, but it's been shown to be more effective as students tend to retain more of what they write about. When you annotate, you might want to summarize the key points in your own words. You can circle key concepts and phrases, though I do think that's very similar to highlighting. Write some brief comments, and really important, write questions in the margins. And again, this is for you, so you can choose to use abbreviations and symbols that you understand. You do not have to write relative to what other people's expectations are. Okay, so we talked about using the margins. Let's look at an example. So here, you can highlight this in a way that you think helps you to best understand this essay. So this is a counterpoint to the essay that we just read. So the essay we just read talked about reasons why we should raise the minimum wage. This talks about reasons why we should not raise the minimum wage. So I'm just going to give you an example with the first body paragraph. It says, one of the most significant concerns when it comes to raising the minimum wage is the potential for job loss, particularly among low-skilled and entry-level workers. According to a study by the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, raising the federal minimum wage to $15 per hour, as proposed by some advocates, could lead to the loss of approximately 1.3 million jobs in the United States. This statistic underscores the risk of making employment less accessible for those who need it most, such as teenagers entering the job market or individuals with limited skills and experience. So I might write something like job loss, and I might write impacts most vulnerable, and in here I'll write low skilled Okay, something like that. And if I was writing, I have a little bit more room here. Okay. All right, so those are my notes. Okay, and you can make your own notes, but remember, annotating is a skill that it's a skill and it's something that that is done to help you to better understand whatever it is that you're reading. So whatever best helps you to understand the text is what you should be doing. Let's finish up with some essay writing tips. Remember to be direct in your writing. You're making an argument, that's your thesis statement. Provide a lot of detail, but don't use unnecessary words. And we want to ensure that our writing is clear to our readers. So don't include extraneous information. It can just confuse your reader. And think of your essay like a puzzle, right? Go back to those videos where we talked about the parts of the introduction, the body, and the conclusion, and fit everything together. Okay, so here is an example of a peer review chart. You can use this if you're working with a partner, but you can also use this if you're working on your own, right? Use the checklist to check your own writing. Okay, so for your homework, I want you to think of something that you need to do at your work. It's either got to be a condition of your employment or maybe something you have to do at school. And think about the steps involved in the process. How would you explain this to someone who has no idea what to do? Because tomorrow we're going to discuss a new genre of writing. We're going to talk about description. All right, guys, thank you so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you in our next class.